My name is Amanda Squiemphen-Yazzie. I'm from the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. I'm also Navajo, Yakima, and Wasco.
All right. So where do you live presently, and have you always lived here?
I currently live in Portland, Oregon, and I've lived here since 2011.
Okay. Where else have you lived?
In the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs.
So, tell us more about Warm Springs. What do people need to know about Warm Springs?
Yeah, so the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs, it's located in Central Oregon. The reservation is about 200,000 acres of land, and there's about 3,000 community members there, tribal members who live there, and outside community members.
So, what would you miss most if you had to leave Oregon tomorrow?
I think what I would miss most if I had to leave Oregon tomorrow is my community, my people, my friends, my family, just the people who, have a place in my heart, and I feel that love from every day.
So, what do you do to earn a living, and what are you doing in your community outside of your living?
So to earn a living, my day job, I am a campaign manager for Karina Miller. She's running for the Oregon Senate District 30 here in Oregon, and I am her campaign manager. Trying to elect the very first Oregon tribal member to our state legislature. Other stuff includes I volunteer on a number of boards. I'm a board member with Next Up Oregon, the Oregon Indian Education Association, and I'm a committee member with the Multnomah County Community Involvement Committee.
So, in 2 words or less, like 1 or 2 words, how would you describe your 2020 and why?
My 2020 has been uncertainty, excitement. and it's like that because we're living in uncertain times, but after every single thing there's something always happening next, and that's where the excitement comes from.
So describe the moment when COVID-19 became real to you.
The moment COVID-19 became real to me is when I was in my apartment for about a week straight, and I haven't left, haven't done anything, and we went to the store. It's actually pretty funny. We went to the store to get more groceries, and it was empty. There was hardly anything at the grocery store, and that's the moment when I was like, wow, COVID-19 is real, and we might be having to go look for our own food somewhere else soon enough.
What were the emotions that were triggered by that?
I think the emotions that were triggered by that exact moment is that I just, again, the uncertainty is what scared me. In our traditional way, we used to hunt, fish, gather, and there's still people who actively do this. But in my mind, I was thinking, I never learned how to properly hunt, how to properly fish. I've never been a traditional gatherer like many are in my community, and I'm like, I'm gonna have to learn how to do this. And I've never learned this stuff, but I've been part of these ceremonies, I've been part of the processes, but I've never been actually doing it myself. And that's where that uncertainty of going into a store and like having to depend on a grocery store is what scared me.
So how did your daily life change at first?
At first, my daily life changed by not going to meetings. So right over there, we have our Max lines, and I would get on the Max and go downtown or to wherever I'm needed to visit the people that I need to see and go to the meetings that I need to be at, and I just couldn't. Everything was Zoom. Yeah.
So now that we're 100 some days into this, what is your daily life like now?
My daily life now is I wake up, I have my morning routine, I fix my bed, I get ready for the day, and I jump on Zoom And that's it. I have my laptop, wherever my laptop, my phone, and my laptop charger are, that's where my work is. So I literally wake up, get on my computer or my phone or whatever meeting I'm needed on, and that's literally what my life is about right now.
How did running a campaign change with COVID?
Wow. Yeah, that's a big question. The campaign changed very big. So prior to the May primary election, Oregon May primary election, I was working on 2 campaigns. The one that I'm currently working on with Karina Miller, and then also William Miller. And William, he was running for House District 50, just right in our neighbors over here. And instead of going door to door, we had to flip our entire campaign plan, and it had to all go either virtually or calling people. You know, there's just like, and I was the field director for that campaign, so it was kind of like relying on me and also the team to figure out new ways to get in contact with voters. So it relied a lot on phone banking, on, you know, Zoom meetings, and just really just trying to find new ways to get in touch with the community. But now 100 some days into this virus, I think we're getting the hang of it, and it's actually working in our advantage, because it doesn't require traveling across the state or anything. So it's definitely working in our advantage right now.
So have you adopted any kind of new habits or routines since the COVID hit that you want to keep in your life as we go forward?
Kind of funny ones. So there's always, yes, I have adopted new things going forward since this virus. And one thing is, I always have masks in my car, and I always have hand sanitizer. Those are like 2 things where I'm like, that's just stuff that we really need to have everywhere we go. Because, you know, I never realized how much germs are actually out there until now, when it's like we really have to focus on it.
So, what's been the biggest challenge for you throughout this pandemic?
Personally, the biggest challenge for me has been just staying. That's a tough one, honestly. Personally, the biggest challenge for me has been actually very recently. I feel honestly pretty privileged that I have a roof over my head, I have running water, I have electricity, I have a place to lay my head at night. But one big challenge for me has been focusing on my community at home, and realizing the privileges that my community my tribe does not have access to at this moment.
Do you want to talk a little bit more, let people know what's happening at Warm Springs?
Yeah, so right now at the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs, like I said, there's over 3,000 community members who currently live there, and over 60% of them do not have access to running water, and or they have very low pressured water. So they don't have that basic human right where they can wake up in the morning, brush their teeth, wash their face, get a drink of water, and wash their hands in the middle of a pandemic. So here I am in Portland, Oregon, living away from my people, and I have all that stuff. So that's where I'm really struggling on just trying to wrap my mind around it, because we're like one of the richest countries in the world, and there's people literally in our state very close to here who can't even have the basic human rights to survive.
So what happened to cause that?
Honestly, when it comes to the water infrastructure at the reservation, it goes all the way back to when our treaties were signed. It goes back to when the BIA came into the reservation and started working and creating that relationship. And honestly, the water infrastructure wasn't as best as it could have been like how it was started, how it was put in. It wasn't up to it. It was for the people who were currently there, living in that moment, not expecting the population to grow. And the current water system that we have, it's for the population that was there when we first arrived there. And it's just, there's many layers that are also on this. Like our tribe, they just don't have enough money. They put Band-Aid fixes on the water infrastructure. And as the days and years go on, those Band-Aid fixes, they add up. So now we're at a point in this time where our water infrastructure is it's the worst it's ever been. And these Band-Aid fixes are catching up to us. And we're at the point now where we need an entirely new water infrastructure system to be able to think about the future and stop being in survival mode.
So how does this pandemic compare to any other big challenges that you've faced in your lifetime?
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, especially with the FedEx jet deciding to be noisy. How does the pandemic compare to any other big challenges that you faced in your life?
The pandemic, compared to any other challenges that I've faced in my life, I think it doesn't add up. Like I said, we're in a very uncertain time in our lives. Like, we don't know what's going to happen in a month. We don't know what's going to happen next week. We don't know who's going to be here next week, who's going to be affected by this. And the uncertainty that this pandemic has brought is something that's scary, and it's also exciting, because there's never going to be a time where we're going to return to the old ways, where we just continue to deal with the way this entire system operates. And that goes for every single community that's been affected by this, specifically the Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities, where they've always been at the bottom of everything. They're our most vulnerable populations in this country, and they're the ones who are being affected. And everything that we've been saying for the last 500 years is finally coming to light. And I think that's where we are thinking about, the future, because we are never going to go back to what was before, like what we known as before.
How do you think your daily life's going to feel like 2 years from now?
I think my daily life 2 years from now is going to be feeling a lot less stressful and just more like stress-free. I mean, that's what I imagine anyway. Like, I feel like right now I'm in a very deep fight or flight mode, and I feel like I've been flying for the last 2, 3, 4 months, because I feel like I'm needed everywhere. I feel like I need to be doing something for my community, the BIPOC community. And that's just, I hope in 2 years that it's not going to be as stressful as it is right now.
So, what in the challenges that you see in your work or in your community with your tribe, what excites you about solving them?
What excites me about solving them is that our youth, the generations that are coming after me, are going to be able to live their lives without having to be in survival mode, without having to go through this world feeling frustrated. I feel like every day I wake up and I'm angry at something or someone, and it's like that frustration that comes with being an Indigenous person. I don't identify as Black or as another person of color, but I imagine that they also feel angry at the systems that continue to hold us down and continue to just harm us. And I imagine one day that the youth that are coming after me won't be experiencing this, and they won't have to put up with the harm and the oppression and everything that comes with being a person of color in this country.
What was your reaction to the George Floyd incident, and how has the community here and the community, your tribal community, reacted to what's happening?
I mean, my first personal reaction to the George Floyd incident, that viral video that went across, I couldn't even watch it. I already knew what was going to happen. And I think I seen it many times on my timeline, on my social media, and I've just told people I'm not going to watch this. Like, it's horrible that this video is even out there, and I was frustrated. I was livid, and that fire is still in me today. And it brought me to go to protest. It brought me to feel angry and yell in these streets. But I think when it comes to my first initial reaction, it also created that passion that has been needed for so long. for communities across this country. Like, so many of us were like, this has been happening. This system has been failing our people. We have been being murdered at disproportionate rates, and it's not okay. So like, this was, I think, just like the last straw. And people are like, we're done. We're done with this. We're done with police brutality. We're done with broken systems, or systems that, just never been in our favor. Like, we're done with these systems and they need to change. So the reaction that my community, the Indigenous community, has had to the Black Lives Matter movement is that we acknowledge that we're experiencing the same exact things, that not the same exact things, but very similar things to the Black community. We're experiencing very similar, when it comes to a bunch of stuff, we are experiencing very similar things when it comes to like the systems of oppression, the systems of genocide, just like the different atrocities that have happened to our communities. It's like, we're here with you. We hear you. We feel what you're feeling. We're angry with you, and we want to stand in solidarity with you. And how can we show up for you? And also, how can we show up for each other? So that's been something that I've really been trying to wrap my mind around, and also try to address the anti-Blackness that is within our Indigenous communities and the anti-Indigenous that's within the Black communities. So it's like, how can we help each other while also addressing the forms of racism that's within our own communities?
So what do you wish people would know about your people that they probably have overlooked for as long as you know? I mean, most people people watching this, who knows what familiarity they have with even Native American, not even knowing all the different nations there. But what would you wish people would know about your people?
I wish people would know about Indigenous people that we experienced a lot of trauma. Like, there's so much trauma. There's historical trauma, generational trauma, all the traumas in this world. We have it. You name it, we have it. And a lot of people look at us to this day and they're like, Indigenous people, they're like, who are they? They're erased. We aren't in textbooks. We aren't seen in mainstream media. We aren't seen anywhere. The most we're seen is in the NFL, when our mascots are plastered all over this freaking country. And it's like, that's how people know us as. That's how they see us as. They think of us as Pocahontas or a Cherokee princess. And they don't realize how harmful this stuff that continues to be brought up in this country, how bad it affects us, because they don't see us for who we are. They don't see us for the beautiful cultures and the beautiful traditions that we have within our own communities. So that's something I wish more people would try to understand, and also realizing the history that's here within every single state that's currently here. The 50 states that are here today, every single one of them are on Indigenous land, and those lands have been occupied by Indigenous people since time immemorial. And I think a lot of people just don't realize that. Like, how we're all thriving and living and going day by day, driving, freaking working, everything that we do, running, it's all on Indigenous land. Indigenous people have been on this land since time immemorial, practicing their traditional ways, either hunting, fishing, gathering, doing, anything that they do. It's like there have been Indigenous people on these lands for so long, and people just don't realize the atrocities that happen. And because they don't realize it, it's like this stuff isn't in history books. So we all have to take it upon ourselves to try to educate ourselves with what really happened, and also acknowledging that this is only one Indigenous story. Like, there's 576 other federally recognized tribes, and that's erasing all the tribes who are not federally recognized. Like, there are so many who just don't have federal recognition because they weren't given their treaty. They weren't given any of that, and they didn't have to sign it. So it's like the erasure of those Indigenous people. So that's just like, it's like a whole lot of layers. But I mean, I wish a lot of people would dive more into the problems and issues that are like being an Indigenous person in this country, like how it affects us. So that's just something I think would be good to know.
What life lessons and experiences that you've had being from a marginalized community, an overlooked community, an oppressed community, you think are lessons that are good for all humans going through this pandemic?
Yeah, so I didn't really introduce myself properly. So in my way, our culture, we introduce ourselves by first saying who our parents and grandparents are. So I'm the granddaughter of Atwai, Rita and Earl Squiemphen. I say Atwai because both of them passed on. I'm the granddaughter of Pete and Polly Yazzie, and I'm the daughter of Atwai Priscilla Squiemphen-Yazzie and Edison Yazzie. And the things that I've learned from the generations that came before me that taught me is like education is really important. Continuing to push ourselves to be lifetime learners is so important. And I think a lot of people, you know, once they get through the normal K through 12 college, if they decide to go to college, it's like they just stop learning. They think there's no other stuff to learn, but we fail to acknowledge that within every single day we're learning something, whether that's a lesson, something like an action, you know, we're always continuing to learn. And a lot of people don't realize that we need to be lifetime learners and just continuing to show up as who we are, as authentically as we are. And that's something that I've kind of learned in my culture is like, you know, just continuing to show up as who we are and representing yourself, your family, your community with dignity and respect, and never, you know, just never giving up, I guess, and continuing to live for the next 7 generations, continuing to learn for the next 7 generations, and continuing to try to push yourself to continue to pave these ways for the next 7 generations that are coming after us.
So, what 1 to 2 words would you use to describe what you feel about the next 5 years?
The next 5 years, in 2 words, I think, I'd say resistance and hope.
What do you mean behind that? What drives those 2 words?
Yeah, so when I use the word resistance, I think of the like I said, going back to the BIPOC communities in this world, how we're continuing to stand up to the system and say, no, we're not going to accept the way things have always been. We're not going to accept it. So it's like putting that resistance on the systems that are currently in place to hold us down, continuing to oppress us and not welcoming us to the table. That's what I mean by resistance.
So, is there a question I should have asked you I haven't? That's always my go-to.
I mean, do you want to learn about the Chooch Fund?
Yes.
Oh.
Thank you. I meant to ask when I got into the community. Tell me about what are you actively doing right now to address these systemic issues that you're faced with?
Yeah. So currently, I am working on volunteering with my sister, Terry Jo Squiemphen-Yazzie, and my cousin, Mallory Smith. The 3 of us together, we are trying to combat the water infrastructure issues that are happening on the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs Reservation. And the Chooch Fund was actually started in collaboration with the MRG Foundation, which is a local organization here in the Portland area. And they're working in collaboration and partnership with the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. And it's very unique of its kind. Like, they set up a account or a foundation specifically for the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. So it gives outside entities, people who live off the reservation, and individuals and organizations who live off the reservation or don't have any ties to it, to be able to allow them to contribute directly to the reservation and the water infrastructure needs that are need to be addressed right now. And we're actually working to fundraise money for that. We're pushing for a lot of people in our community and across the nation and world, I guess, to donate to this fund. And actually, we're coming in on about 30 hours, and I think we're close to $20,000, honestly. And that's within 30 hours. I came into this yesterday, July 1st, with the intention of raising $10,000 in a month, and we raised 15,000 in 24 hours. So it's just like, you know, I really underestimated my networks, my connections, and just everyone getting the word out, and those people feeling that heart and everything to help the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs.
So, is there anything else I didn't cover that we should cover? What's your press agent say?
Anything?
I think I got most of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Made me cry.
No.
About mom.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Do you want to talk about the Black Lives Matter event that you get going on?
Oh,
tomorrow?
yeah. So the Black Lives Matter movement is very important to me. I really want to stand with the Black community, and I'm actually working in partnership with Rachel Dixon, and she represents a organization, and I think it's called Advancing Equity Collective. There's 3 words. It's very, I should look them up, but yes, yeah. So together we are putting on this. It's called the 4th of the Lie protest, and it's happening at Custer City Park here in Southwest Portland. And what our purpose is, we want to demand the city of Portland, or whoever's in charge of it, to change the name of this city park. Custer, George Armstrong Custer, he was responsible for the killing of the many Sioux tribes, Plain Indians, who, like back in the day, you know, when he was ordered to wipe off these during the Indian Removal Act, he basically was responsible for removing the indigenous people who were in these lands. And that very famous fight, the Battle of Little Bighorn, that's when also known as Custer's Last Stand, like, it's named after him. This park is named after him, and we don't agree with that. It shouldn't be named after someone who committed genocide, murder, raped our indigenous people. So this park is basically a representation of white supremacy, and we're not okay with that. So together we are working in collaboration to make sure this park gets a name change, and also it's just like we're going to occupy this space, taking back land that just showing people that we're here, and we don't accept it.
All right, so this is going to be on the internet, so we don't know when someone's going to watch it. We don't know where they're going to watch it, but we know that someone's watching this right now at this moment. You know, as they hear your voice. So it's kind of a time capsule, right? So what message would you want to share with that person in this moment?
With the person listening?
Yeah, whoever's watching this right now. What would the message you want to kind of bottle up here and say, here, have this as you watch it?
I'll say a message that I want to share with people right now is that Black Lives Matter, Indigenous lives matter, communities of color matter, and we are finding our voices. We are standing up, and we're saying no to the systems. And I just want to ask everyone that you be open to learning more. You be open to exploring different ways to educate yourself, and just be open to change. Like, don't be stuck in your ways, and just be open to stuff that's going to be happening in the future, because together we're going to have a more just society for everyone, and it finally is going to be the land of the free one day, hopefully. So that's just something I want to say, like, you know, together we're going to unite eventually, but it has to take everyone to be open to educating themselves further.
That's it. Wonderful.
Thank you.